Security Secretary General John Kelly on this Memorial Day weekend as we get set to barbecue. General, great to see you. But before we talk about the Secretary stuff, we do want to talk about what happened over in Manchester because it really relates to what you're dealing with here.
This is a Fox News alert. There's been another arrest tied to the terror attacks overnight. We understand they're up to 10 that they have taken into custody. They had more raids in Manchester and Merseyside. They raided a barber shop. They think that perhaps the terrorist could have put the components of the bomb together at his house and then actually assembled it at another apartment about 3 miles away. This is exactly what the 7/7 terrorists did back in England.
General Kelly, what's your reaction to this, and what do we need to do to prevent something like this from happening here in the U.S.?
Well, first, it's everywhere. It's constant. We've had 4 major terrorist attacks in a week in 4 different places, obviously Manchester, Egypt, Philippines, and Indonesia, by generally the same groups. It's nonstop. The good news is for us in America, we have amazing people protecting us every day. DHS, obviously, FBI. Fighting the away game is DOD, Department of Defense, CIA, NSA, working with these incredible allies we have in Europe and around the world. But it can happen almost here anytime. I was telling Steve on the way in here, if he knew what I know about terrorism, he'd never leave the house. In the morning, yeah. But the good news is, again, we're the finest men and women in uniform, out of uniform, police officers, local law enforcement, New York City cops protecting us.
Thank goodness. Thank you for what you do.
General, so when you're in your uniform and they say go to Afghanistan and Iraq, it makes sense. You train for that. You know how to do it. You know how to organize. But now our uniform people are people who work for you, the cops, the detectives, every single day. They are. What is it like? They're almost transforming from the guy who writes your tickets and tells you to slow down to, excuse me, where are you from and what are you up to?
They again, are among the finest Americans. 45 and a half years in the Marine Corps, I worked with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard nonstop. I never thought I'd ever meet another group of people like them, and now I'm in DHS, whether it's local, state officials, law enforcement, rather, or my own people, Customs and Border Protection, ICE, Secret Service, people like that. Just phenomenally good people, dedicated, work hard, and they're protecting us.
Since you got this job, you're talking a lot about the wall. The president talks about the wall all the time. We need it. We need a barrier in some places and flat out a wall in other places. The president, former president, took a shot at this president, I believe, in Germany yesterday.
There are disruptions in these countries, if there's conflict, if there's bad governance, if there's war, if there's poverty. In this new world that we live in, we can't isolate ourselves. We can't hide behind a wall.
Are we hiding behind a wall?
Not at all. We're not hiding behind a wall. We are constructing physical barrier backed up by technology and, of course, the great men and women of Customs and Border Protection to simply safeguard our southern border. It's not going to impede in any way the legal crossing of millions of people a week. Mexicans and all other nationalities, Americans going south and north, normal commercial traffic will move. But we're not hiding behind a wall. And you can't defend anything by hiding behind something.
You mentioned ICE agents a moment ago. There's Senator Ron Johnson, I think 2 days ago, mentioned that the Obama administration knowingly let in members of MS-13, that super violent gang from Central America.
Well, Steve, I don't know anything about that, but I can tell you as of the 20th of January, that would never happen. I don't know if it happened before, but it would never happen on my watch.
How? What's the big change?
Mr. Trump came in with a series of campaign promises, and he told me one day, and I didn't know him before I took this job, and he just said to me on the first day, you know what I want you to do on the border? I said, I got it, boss, and off I went. And so we are taking care of business on the border.
Is he letting, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Border crossings right now are down by 70%. 70% since January.
So do we need the wall if they're down by 70?
We definitely need the wall. We need a physical barrier in certain places and certainly technology in other places. But key to that reduction is there's almost no unaccompanied minors coming across the border, and that is kind of the recruiting pool for MS-13 and the other cartels.
You had a
Almost
tough
none.
line. You said, listen, if you come over here, you're getting sent back, and if you come in with your families, we're going to separate the families. And it said, wow, how could he say that? But the message is to the Central and South American countries, you got to stay where you're at, because it's not going to be, your path isn't paved with gold if you don't do it right.
You're right, Brian. And let me tell you, we work so closely with those great countries down there, to include Mexico. The relationship at my level couldn't be better. We collaborate on either side of that border. I'm traveling down to Central America. Of course, in my last job, I was down there all the time. So we're trying to make things right down there, because much of their problems, of course, are attributed to our drug demand in the United States. So we're working the whole thing: economic, diplomatic, social, law enforcement. Down 70% since Donald Trump took the reins.
I remember when you said that if you're an illegal here in America and you're caught with a DUI, you're going back. And I asked the president about that, and he said, I'm going to let the general do the job. This is because they say a good leader is one that can delegate, and I know that he's letting you make a lot of these rules.
75% of the people that the great men and women of ICE have taken into custody, 75% are criminals. The other 25% are not innocent. There are multiple deportees. There are people who have fleeing from the law. They're fugitives, but they're not necessarily convicted criminals. So 75% are indeed criminals. The other 25% are not the valedictorians of their high school class.
That's well
That's
right.
a nice way to say it.
All right. In addition to fighting terror, you are also the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and you're worried about all of us being safe during the summer, and including the hurricane season.
Right.
You got some tips for us.
Watch the news. We have already started, as you might imagine, the planning, working with the president, working with the White House. FEMA has got the lead on this, working with the state and locals, working with the National Guard, getting ready for hurricane season that, of course, starts on the 1st of June. So we're ready to go.
Here you go. Some tips. Apply for a TSA pre-check. I've done that. It is fantastic.
We've all got that.
Tweet or
It gets you
message.
through fast.
Ask TSA. Prepare for security. Follow the liquid rule and call TSA. Do your part. Don't just expect you to do it alone. Now, on Memorial Day, we do want to talk about somebody. I know you think about those who lost their lives in the line of battle, but for you, the highest-ranking officer to lose his son in this generation in the line of battle, what are you thinking about and your family thinking about this Memorial Day?
Well, the first thing I'd say is we don't need Memorial Day. If you're a Gold Star family member, you think about him or her every single day, in fact, hundreds of times a day. But what Memorial Day, in my mind, is good for is to remember, for America to remember the million men and women over our history, the million men and women who have given their life for this country in combat. So on Memorial Day, even if you're at the beach or taking advantage of some mattress sale somewhere, think about that.
Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me about the man who's splitting the screen with you?
Second Lieutenant Robert Kelly.
He's the finest man I ever knew.
Why?
Just is. Yeah, finest guy. Wonderful guy. Wonderful husband, wonderful son, wonderful brother. Brave beyond all get out. His men still correspond with us. They still mourn him as we do.
Great comments about a great son from a great patriot. General, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so very much. Yep.
God bless you.
Semper Fidelis.
Yeah. We're going to talk to the president.
I think we're leaving.
About getting another day off.
Time to go.
All right, because you're working too hard.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.